Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to this year's first edition of the Lusaka Apex Medical University Weekly Research Presentations. I'm your host, Ms. Shinondo, here as part of Corporate Communications. Today, we have a very special presentation. This is from Dr. Akanimo Odon. He is a Nigerian international business and strategy development expert. He's also the author of The Graduate Code. And today he will be giving us a special presentation on internationalization and grantship for research impact. Now, I would like to acknowledge the presence of members of our professorial team, Professor Njelasani, Professor Lambert, Professor Mwawa, Professor Mudenda, Professor Amaus, Professor Viemba. We have quite a good number. Professor Gilani, to mention a few. And as well in the room we have Professor Mwansa. I believe we also have Dr. Mkandawira in the house. Now, just to give you a very brief introduction of exactly who Dr. Odon is, okay? He is known by many names. He is known as Mr. Africa or Mr. Fix-It. But why? Why is he known as that? Well, let's start with him being a creator of the program for the internationalization of education, an international initiative trying to increase the international impact of education in Africa. Also, he's the creator of one of the most comprehensive and UK CPD's certified suites. Okay, it is a career program in Africa. It is called the Career Enhancement Program Online, CEPO, CEPO. Now, let's touch a bit on the Graduate Code. This is a practical guide focused on rekindling the essence of what it means to be a graduate. This book is targeted towards students, young professionals, those who are doing business, as well as those who are furthering their education. It is a set of ideas and suggestions to help one make the most of their time at university and the years after graduation. So this is quite an exciting session. Dr. Odon, he's also with over 40 million pounds secured in international grants. He has facilitated more than 50 focused workshops, fostering research impact and collaboration between academia, government, and industry. So it truly is a pleasure to have us here with us. I would now like to invite Professor Viemba to the floor to give us his welcoming remarks before he invites our main presenter. Professor Viemba, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm doing it now. Yes. Okay, can you hear me? I just want to make sure that you can hear me. So thank you very much, Ms. Shinondo, for that introduction of our guest today. He is indeed a special guest. I must say that I met Dr. Odon at the 7th conference. Oh, means I have to put on my
mute. Hello.
Hello.
We can see you are
okay.
With us.
Sorry, I'm there was just a challenge with the. There's a feedback here, so I'm.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Okay, I'm told you can hear me. So I was saying that basically thanking Ms. Shinondo for the introduction of our guest today. And I was saying that I met Dr. Odon at the 7th Congress of the African Scientific Innovation.
We will surely invite
looks like there's a
Viemba to give a proper introduction as well.
Shinondo.
In the spirit of timekeeping,
Ms. Shinondo.
I'd now like to invite our presenter, Dr. Akanimo Odon, to the floor. Dr. Odon, the floor is yours.
Hello. Good morning. Actually, I think Professor Prof actually trying to give a talk, but I'm not sure most of you heard him because I could hear him. He wasn't connected. I wasn't sure. Maybe his microphone was muted or something.
But it looks like there was a challenge here. Some people were not able to hear me. Maybe I could say before you come in, Doc.
I can hear you very clearly, Professor Godfrey. I can hear you very clearly.
All right. Thank you so much for making time. I really appreciate that you made this time because I've been really looking forward to this presentation. I was saying that I met you at the 7th Congress of the African Scientific and Innovation Council, ASRIC, which is basically an ex-African Union scientific arm. And this was held between 10th and 13th December in Zanzibar last year. And Dr. Odon made a presentation there because part of the ASRIC, what we call the diaspora. And so there were two people, Professor Mimi and Dr. Odon, who represented the diaspora because they had various diasporas. And they spoke, each one of them on a different topic. And so Dr. Odon spoke really on grants, if you like, grants writing. And I was really impressed, with his presentation. He basically gave an example where he had asked some questions about people that had attended, grants writing meetings and or training or capacity building training and workshops. And then after that, in answer to that question, a number of people really had attended these workshops. But when they were basically challenged as to how many grants they have written within a week or within a month, they couldn't really answer. So, in other words, basically, he was challenging us that it's one thing to be trained, and also depends on the model that one is using to train people in grants writing. I was very impressed. And when he gave his own profile in terms of what he has done, how much money he has been able to mobilize, I was very impressed. And so I told him, look, Doc, you'd like me to also speak to us at the Lusaka Apex Medical University. And he agreed. If you did not know that, in actual fact, he has an MOU with us already. So that made things very easy. So without wasting much of your time, I want to invite you now, Doc, to speak to us on this topic that you have chosen. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Prof. Much appreciated. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning. So I'm going to put on my video so at least folks can see me. It's winter and it's pretty cold at the moment. So, but obviously, I in my job, I travel quite a lot. And I think my traveling escapades should start really soon, hopefully. I'm hoping to also be in Zambia at some point in the next couple of months or several months to come. Well, I had an introduction, but I guess what I'm hoping I can do for the next 1 hour is to give a sense as to what grantsmanship feels like. And I use the word grantsmanship intentionally because it is an art. It's an art and the act of winning funding. So something happened a few years ago. I remember going into a room and I was having a chat with like academics. I think it's about a room about maybe 120 or more lecturers of a university. And I said that if you were to choose one singular item that impacts on your work as an academic, on your research, what would it be? What is the most important, if you like, element or factor that restricts your capacity to be productive in what you do? And at the end of the day, there was a general consensus. Everything boils down to money. So even if you say lack of training, or if you have money, you could pay trainers to give the training. And whatever the angle the academics came through in terms of what are the obstacles, it still boils down to access to funding. Now, interestingly, Africa as a continent, it's across different African countries anyway, you have levels of universities. So there's public universities who sometimes depend on government for their funding. And then you have private universities. An example is LAMU and medical university. But the point is, even when you're a private university, you're also under pressure because there's no government money or revenues or funding coming from the government. And so you have to be strategic in how you raise your revenue. And most of the time, there's a dependence on tuition fees to drive that kind of funding landscape for the internationalization or the capacity building or competence building of the institution. And as a matter of fact, any university, and this is a fact globally, who depends solely on tuition fees to survive, that is actually it's a misnomer, really. International universities have to have multiple income sources to be able to grow the capacity. And as a matter of fact, one of those areas of revenue generation is actually international grants and funding, which many African institutions don't explore appropriately. And so a few years ago, I remember I was also in separate because I give lots of training across the many African countries I travel around. And so I remember I was in a room and I was asking academics, I said, how many of you love funding or like to apply for funding? They say, yes, they do. And I asked a simple question. I said, so how many of us in the room can tell us maybe the top 5 international organizations that give funding in their field? And I was quite surprised. Out of a room of over 100 academics, only 2 hands went up. So now I'm thinking, how can you be looking for money and don't even know who gives money? That's like a fundamental premise, okay? And so for the next 1 hour, what I want to do is just, I'm hoping, Professor Godfrey, is it okay if I make it interactive so that folks can ask questions? Because I think this was supposed to be a foundational presentation that can lead up to a more practical, intensive workshop on the ground, because you can't cover all the fundamentals and principles. Even though you can do it theoretically, to win funding, you need to get doing it. That's the only way you can do it. So is that okay if I go in an interactive fashion for this session? Because I think I can get a bit more context as to what the issues are within Zambia, and especially with your university. Is that okay, Prof?
Yes, that's okay. That's fine.
Perfect. Okay, good. So I was going back to the premise. So I said that. So the question is, how can you be looking for funding and don't even know who gives funding? That's kind of that makes no sense in a sense. If you get my point. And so over several years, I have spent time developing a very good framework that help institutions in increasing their internationalization, but also their grantsmanship or their capacity to win funding. And except it is driven institutionally, you might have the individual person who perseveres and is able to, through maybe following up on these principles, able to win funding or source for funding. So, but at the end of the day, it's always better there's an institutional framework to support that premise for it to be sustainable. And that's the only way it works. And so, so because of that, I've been able to develop a framework into a training program actually that can be delivered over 2 days. And it's a training program that is practical oriented and is really transformational. Within the program, there are 5 key modules, really. And the modules cover modules that focuses on problems, on people, partnerships, preparation, and practice. So 5 things. So it's problems, people, partnerships, or profiling, preparation, and practice. And those are the 5 modules that actually that drives this training program. And there's enough evidence I have that folks who have taken the program and totally had their lives and professional research or academic careers transform in a space of 1 to 2 months, because it's very practical oriented. And I will speak about this maybe afterwards if there are any questions with respect to how this works. Now, during COVID, something else happened. So this was normally delivered as a face-to-face comprehensive, intensive 2-day program. But during COVID, we had to now redesign the program so it can be fully delivered online. And I'm speaking to you right now. There are at least 3 international funded projects that I'm managing that is training over 400 academics across 6 African countries on these same fundamentals of international career enhancement and grantsmanship. So just to show you that actually it's a very clear impact, which is the reason why funding bodies are funding for this program to be delivered continuously. Obviously, the resources are always limited, but then within the context of practicality and also sustainability, you have to figure ways of making this happen. And that's what actually we have done. Okay, so I will spend some minutes focusing on these 5 areas to give you a sense. Today was supposed to be a way to look at funding and grantsmanship within the umbrella of internationalization a bit differently. So I'll give a small example. So a few months ago, I think it was in September, was it July, September, I think October, I can't remember the specific month, but this was 2 years ago. So I was supposed to fly into Nigeria. I live in England. I was to go to Nigeria to go and deliver, and I was going to be around. And I felt it would be a good idea if I maybe stopped by at a university, which I know very well, just to give a talk to the staff members. Are you following me? And he said, that's absolutely fine. So I rang the vice chancellor and said, VC, I'm going to be in town for a week. Can I stop by and give a talk to your academics? Would that be okay? And he was like, oh, absolutely. That would be absolutely fantastic. Then he asked me and said, so Dr. Odon, what area would you want to talk about? And I said, how about on resource mobilization and grantsmanship? And I remember the VC said, oh, no, don't worry, choose another topic. And I said, why, sir? I said, because 3 months ago, follow me, this is important. 3 months ago, they engaged a training consultant to deliver a 4 or 5 day training on international funding and writing proposals for funding to these academics. And so, because it was only 3 months ago, there will be no need for me to speak about that topic. Choose something else. I said, okay, that's science. That's fine, VC. Anyway, I flew into Nigeria, and obviously I was in the room with this. I think it was a room of over 200 academics. And okay, so before I started giving my talk, I asked a question. I said, my question was, well, I heard that 3 months ago, you guys had a very comprehensive training on grantsmanship and international funding. And they all said, oh, it was absolutely fantastic. I said, that's really cool. Then I said, so in the last 3 months, remember, this is a room of over 200 academics. So I said, in the last 3 months, how many of us in the room have actually applied for funding? And I was in absolute shock when only 3 or 4 hands went up. So now I'm thinking, wait a minute. So what have you guys been doing for the last 3 months? Do you know me? And this is true. If 1 week goes by and I haven't applied for funding, I have fever. Okay, I don't know. I remember I was painting the picture of a case where, and this is important. So I'm sure it happens to a few of us in the room where sometimes there's something on your mind, you know, and you're a bit worried about something, but you can't really place your finger on what it is worrying you. And it's just hanging there. Even though you're having the conversations, it's just there. You're worried. And unless you resolve that, it never leaves. That happens to me even now. That I'm like, why don't I feel very happy today? Can I explain what has happened? What am I feeling this way? Then I remember, oh, I haven't applied for money in the last 2 weeks. This is actually true. That happens to me now. Because there is too much money in this world for any academic or researcher to be broke. I've lost count the last 10 years, I have not been on minimum 2 funded research projects concurrently. I can't remember when last that happened. Because I know how to find money. So it is not for me, the real issue, which is what the course, this is my program or my talks or my workshop focuses on. The issue is not in writing proposals for funding. I've heard many people tell me, hey, Doc, can you come and train? I remember I literally was in South Africa in November, just a few months ago. And before I went to, this is University of Johannesburg, before I went there, the faculty dean and the management said, hey, Dr. Odon, can you come and train our academics on how to write proposals for funding? And I was like, well, how many days have you got for this training? And it was like, maybe 2 days, 1 day, maybe. I'm like, I beg to differ. I don't think the problem is in writing proposals. You know the reason why? Because the average academic knows how to write. Just a little guidance is what they require. The issue in winning money is not about writing. The issue actually fundamentally is based on a mindset shift. Once your mind changes on how you view money and the whole agenda of grantsmanship and internationalization, everything changes. It's actually true. So I'm just telling you now that actually for me, if 1 week or 2 weeks go by and I haven't applied for money, I have fever. What do you think causes that? Because my brain has changed. There is too much money. And a simple way to know this is this. If I ask, if you don't mind me, I want to make it practical, if I may. If I ask everyone in the room to please maybe take out your mobile phones, let's try something quickly, if you may. Please, if you take out your phones, mobile phones. Now, I'd like you to try something very simple. Go to Google, so the Google app. Okay. And then when you get to the Google app, can you please type the following? Type international funding in then write your area of specialty. So if you're in chemistry, international funding in chemistry, if you are in, I don't know, education management, type international funding in education management. If you're an economist, write international funding in economics. So whatever your area of specialty, then click enter. Now and then tell me what you see. I want to make a very simple point. So once you've done it, can somebody, I want to make it a conversation. Can folks tell me what they see? Because this is important. So I focus a bit more on changes people's mindsets. Because once that is achieved, everything is easy. Everything else is easy. And I'll paint a picture of what I mean as we progress. What do you see? Yes, go on, Miss Olga.
Okay, thank you. So on mine, first I got the AI responses. This was for corporate communications. I decided to give it a shot. The AI responses were: international corporate foundations and grants programs can provide funding for corporate communications projects. These programs are often funded by multinational corporations and can support a variety of causes. Then further down, it gave a list of international corporate foundations and grant programs for NGOs in developing countries. So the list, it just listed areas or fields such as social welfare.
So, Ms. Olga, that makes sense. AI will give you that kind of a response because it's defining what I asked. But if you try a Google search, it's different. A Google search would actually list opportunities available now you can apply for. That's the difference. If anybody else sees that in the room, could you confirm, please? Because I'm trying to make it as interactive. So what you would find is, anybody else in the room?
Again.
Yeah. Yes, go on, Olga.
I think I found a list. It says grants in media and communications. So it had various NGOs being named, their locations such as Australia, the EU, Albania, Algeria.
That's correct. Doesn't matter your area of specialty, what you would find is a long, endless list. In fact, if you scroll down in Google, you'll probably find page 1 to page 30. And I discovered most people just stop at page 2. But my evidence shows that the real juice of most searches begins from page 3. Because if I've got money, I don't have to optimize it to be on page 1 on the Google search. You come look for the money. I've advertised that I've got funding to give to you. So people who you find on page 1 and page 2 of Google searches are optimized folks who want maybe. But if I've got money, why do I have to hustle myself? It's your business to find the money that I'm trying to give to you. But I'm making a point though. Now on my laptop, okay, I have an Excel spreadsheet. So this is how practical I get. In my Excel spreadsheet, the top 100 international organizations that give funding in my field, I know them. I know when they give calls for funding. I know why they give calls for funding. I even know what documents they need to give calls for funding. I even know who they gave funding to last. Why is that important? Why should I know who these guys gave funding to last? Anybody? It's very basic, literally. It's not rocket science. The reason why I need to know is because if I knew somebody they give funding to last, and the good thing about most folks who give funding is that, and this is very interesting, but it's true, is that most folks who give funding, they all have one thing in common, is that they like every other person else to know that they give funding. So the chances are on their website, on whatever they do on their social media handles, you will see them promote the funding they've given. So in fact, I remember cases where the money that they spent, please follow me, to promote the funding they gave was actually more than the funding they gave. Are you following me? It's a natural thing. So it means that it is easy to find out who they give funding to. So if I knew who won this funding, what do I do? So I started trying something 10 years ago. I will literally write, because if you go to the website of these funding bodies, you will see who won the funding last. I will write to the person who won and I said, dear so and so. Upon careful investigation, I discovered that you were the awardee, the winner of so funding award maybe last year on a project on this, and the other one. I've looked at the project and the work you've done so far, and it's been absolutely fantastic. It's very, very impressive. I have so much to learn from you. As it happens, I am also in the process of applying for a similar funding in the same body. Would you be open to a conversation on how you won the funding? Or would you be open to be an advisor or consultant to my funding application? Or, see what I'm doing? So in my training program, I actually make participants do this in the classroom. That's how practical I get. There's no stories because I know academics are very busy. So once they leave the room, that's the end of it. They think about thinking about marking student scripts and lecture notes and curriculum development. So in the training program, it's so practical that you get them out of their comfort zone. So I do this. If I do this to maybe 5 or 7 winners of previous award from an NGO or international organization I'm trying to apply for funding to, chances are maybe 2 or 3 replies, but bang, it gets to the point where I get comfortable. I actually ask them, because there's no rule saying like I can't do that. I ask them, if it doesn't breach confidentiality rules, might you be able to share with me the proposal that won the funding? It's very practical. So you think I would have access to 2 or 3 proposals that have won money and I wouldn't know how to cook my proposal? Makes no sense. How practical people need to get. It's a mind shift because there's too much money. Your phone shows that. It's a long list. So I know what they ask for. If I didn't know, so I'll just go back to those modules. So problems. Let's begin with problems. So it's a bit more concise because I can speak about this for the next 3 days. And there is evidence to show that the practical nature and the mind shift of what I do or try to do works, because I've won over 40 million pounds in the last 5 years. Just one man. That's a lot of money. And that's true. So what am I saying? Let's begin with problems. Okay. Now, when you see the average academic who applies for funding, and this is very interesting to see, and maybe we can try it in the room. And I say, when was the last time you applied for funding? Maybe somebody will say 6 months ago. For me, that is too long. Doesn't make sense. There's too much money. So it means that if there is too much demand or request to apply for funding opportunities, and for each application, it takes some time and effort. So what you're supposed to do, therefore, is put a structure in place to make it easy for you to submit. What if I told you guys that just 2 days ago, I submitted a grant application for new funding? So I'm speaking to you right now. When I woke up this morning, I had 3 alerts on my phone of new opportunities I can apply for. Why? Because even my alert system on my phone has been designed such that, and this is very interesting, but such that when a new funding opportunity that concerns my area of interest shows up online, I get an alert. And it's actually very easy to do. So I teach this in the program. Because how might you do that? It's very easy. It's actually a part of the website of most international funding bodies. Most people don't even go to. And it's a very simple part. Can you guess what it is? Your mind will even go there. So if you went to the website of a funding body that give funding, what might be the most important part of that website to focus a bit on? It's very simple. It's actually subscribe to our newsletters. Because anybody who gives funding would actually inform you, this is important, about their intention to give funding even before they even put the funding framework together. So I know that in advance because I'm subscribed to the newsletters, which is why I get alerts on my phone. This is winning money from a point of intentionality and strategic perspectives. That's how practical one has to get. Because I discovered that most academics spend so much time preparing lecture notes and they do amazingly well. They spend so much time giving lectures, attending workshops and conferences, and the one that beats me the most is the amount of committees and subcommittees that the average African academic belongs to. And the point is, are these committees very important to your career? Yes, they are. But how about you add another committee? I call it the money committee, which involves you putting together a group of friends. And I'll speak about that in a minute. So I follow it has to be intentionality. So problems. So when I ask the average person who applies for funding, I say, okay, well, when last year I applied for funding? Say maybe 6 months ago. Then I say, how did you hear about this funding opportunity? And if this is true, please, can you confirm for me? Most people will tell me that the uncle of their nephew forwarded a link to the in-law of their niece, who forwarded the link to them on a WhatsApp group of the family. And by mistake, they saw the link and decided, okay, they apply. Which is the reason why, for some reason, most African applicants I see are always in a hurry because deadline for the application is in 3 days' time. Why do you always have to be in a hurry? I can't remember when last I was so much under pressure to apply for funding because deadline was in a few days' time. No, because I don't allow opportunities bump into me by chance. I know who the bodies are. I know who gives money. I know what. So if you knew that a funding body gave a call for applications in April last year, and you checked and you go to the website, and they also gave a call for applications in April the year before last, what does it mean? Miss Olga, what does that mean? Sorry, I'm not putting you on the spot or anything. It basically means that the chances are they will give a call for applications in April this year. So what do you think I do? By September last year or even October, I do an email to the body. And my email reads, dear so-and-so. Oh, by the way, I noticed that you give calls for funding opportunities around the April period. And is there a chance that you'll be doing the same thing April next year? And if so, are you able to share with me the potential themes and areas of focus for your next funding call? How many people do that? Well, I do, but because I'm crazy. But you have to act outside the box to win money. You have to literally respect money for money to respect you. Do you know how many times the funding body writes back and they say, Dr. Odon, we are so impressed about how much you follow our work and our intentions to cause impact through funding. And then they respond to me. So guess what? I am much better placed than the average person who bumps into the call. I know why they are giving the call because I asked. Every call has a politics behind it. So problems. So why do you have to bump into funding calls when you can actually set yourself up in a way and structure and system where you know who is calling for what when? That's why I have an Excel spreadsheet. So on my Excel spreadsheet, if the call timing is annually, I call it recurrent funds. Problems. Now, you can't write for a funding opportunity unless there's a clear problem to solve. The trouble is, most times I see people who write for funding, they are in a hurry. And I can tell, I sit down in many funding assessment meetings, and I can tell a proposal that was rushed within 2 minutes of opening it. When you see a spelling mistake in the executive summary, that would discourage me as a funder. I mean, you don't take my funding opportunity serious enough to spend time and effort making a proposal perfect and in place. Then I won't take it seriously as a funder. For me, as a rule of thumb, if I don't have at least 3 to 4, 5 days even after the proposal to focus on just proofreading and editing is not worth submitting. If I don't have up to 5 days extra before the deadline just to focus on giving 2 or 3 persons who were not involved in writing the proposal at all, just to proofread, edit, and review, I won't submit it. But that requires some time management and some level of intentionality. Let me give a simple example of how international institutions overseas get, which Africans are still struggling with. If I asked you and said, can you guess, because I checked this a few weeks ago, can you guess? So I'm a director of Africa for Lancaster University, amongst my other hats. If I said, can you guess how many current live funded projects Lancaster University is currently on? I mean, across the university, how many funded projects will you say they are on? And you guess? If I tell you the number, you wouldn't believe it, because I almost fell over my chair when I was told the number. One university, over 3,000. I mean, live. This is what structure does. Over 3,000 live funded projects. This has no business with tuition fees. There's so much money in this world. For any institutions, we broke. When it comes to grants, and the cool thing about grants is you don't have to repay. It's not a loan. So unless you put some skin in the game, and that's because these institutions they understand the funding landscape, international funding landscape, and so they put some structure in place to make it easy. You know the reason why? So I'm speaking about problems. So you have to write a proposal to show an available problem. That is the basis with which you win money. Nobody writes a proposal for funding to buy I don't know, a Rolls Royce. Well, maybe if you have a benefactor who has too much money, but generally, grants and international funding for impact projects is based on problems you're solving. So the question is, when I ask the average academic, can you, if I met you at the elevator, let's make a point, and I eavesdropped, and you were having a chat with a fellow colleague, and the chat said, oh my goodness, I'm looking for funding opportunity, and I happen to be a funder. And after we come out of the lift, I turn to you and I ask you, oh, sorry, I eavesdropped in your conversation. I'm a funder. Can you send me a proposal in the next hour? Because it's deadline for so and so and so. And I ask academics in the room, how many of you have proposals well thought out, concept notes of problems you can solve, written out already? I've been asking this for the last 7 years. Each time I ask, I always see less than 5% of the room raise up their hands. You're not ready for money. You're not ready for money. In my laptop, I can show you. I've got a folder called Case for Support, because that's what normally you call grant proposals, or the main element of a funding proposal is a case to support, which is what the problem statement, objectives of the funding comes into play. I've got over 70 proposals. I have written them already. Hello, they're on my laptop. So it means that each time I see a funding call for a new opportunity, okay, it takes me less than 10 minutes to think carefully. And guess what I'm thinking? I'm thinking, which of my current proposals do I need to tweak or rejig or revise or revamp to meet the prescriptions and requirements of this call. That is why I am able to respond to calls quick. That kind of aligns with the preparation aspect of the 5 Ps. Because writing a proposal takes time. So why do you have to wait until you see the call, then begin to write? That makes no sense. I've written already. So that's why I respond to calls all the time. That's why I win, because the more you submit, the more you win. That's why I win lots of money. I'm not saying I don't get rejections, but the more you win and now build a track record, the less the rejections. It's like a nice sustainable cycle of impact and money. So problems. So even if you know the problems you want money for, have you articulated them? So in my training program, I get people to think about problems, not only about problems from a multidisciplinary perspective, because nobody gives money anymore. That's old school, just on a singular dimension of a problem. Nobody who does that anymore. So if you're a chemist and you have a chemical problem, you want to think about carefully, what is the business dimension of the chemical problem? What is the environmental dimension of the chemical problem? What is the legal? It means that you have to be intentional enough to put people around you to begin to think carefully. That's why I was talking about a new committee. I call mine the money crew. In my team of money making, which is why we're having so much fun, I've got multidisciplinarity in the team. That leads me to the next point of people. The next P. Nobody I know who wins lots of money does it solo. Africans are very solo. It's me. This time I meet every professor applying for funding or a researcher. I say, which funding is this about? Say it's my application. It doesn't even want the next colleague in the department to know they're applying for money. What are you doing? That makes no sense. Nobody does that anymore. You have to be open and strategic and have a team in place if you want to win serious money, because it's quite a cumbersome work to do. And so in my sessions, I tell people, I train about what makes up a standard, a basic team. What are the key roles? It requires the liaison person, the finance person, the sourcing person, the person who finds. And interestingly, the person who finds shouldn't even be the person who writes. The trouble now is the fact that the average professor does everything. You find opportunity, you write, you look for the partners, you do the budgeting, you do this, collect the CVs, and you have 100 students to teach, scripts to mark, subcommittee meetings to go for. Come on. So even the intentionality of putting a team, a crew around you itself is required for sustainable grantsmanship. That's people. I move to partnerships. This is very important. For partnerships, and I struggle with this really as I travel around Africa, the fact that if I ask the average academic, have you done any projects? Or first and foremost, do you know anybody in, so you're all in Zambia. Do you know any academic or do you have any family member in other Southern African countries? Chances are most people in Zambia do, because I've been in Zambia many times. Okay. And then you ask, okay, that's interesting. Does your family member or friend know what you actually do? Then again, they know I'm a professor, but a professor of what? Okay, so your family member or friend in South Africa know you're a professor, but they don't even know what you do. On top of that, have you informed them that you are open to opportunities in South Africa? Well, you haven't. Why not? Okay, because for you to thrive, you need to be intentional even in your partnership. And this is important. So in the training program, this is how practical it gets. I make the participants on the program create LinkedIn accounts if they don't already have them. Do you know, as we're having a conversation right now, the first thing I did as I came on the call, this is how my mind works, is I just saw, I've never met her before. She's on the call now, but I want to make a point. Mrs. Shinondo. I just Googled her name because I don't have a first name. And I Googled Shinondo and LAMU. And the name pops out. And I saw Olga. So I put the name on LinkedIn. She pops up. I added her. I was doing this while Prof was introducing. I don't waste time. That's how intentional and on the ball people have to get. Because now I know she's a communication expert. I did a funding opportunities around communication that I require expertise. I have a new partner, even if she doesn't know it yet. That's the way I operate. That's the way people should start operating. That level of intentionality where how many times have you gone for a workshop yearly? And most people do that all the time. But they just go for a workshop and come back. And you haven't made any friends. Let me tell you how intentional I get. During COVID, okay? During COVID, I increased my partnership leverage. You won't believe it. Because remember that period in COVID where every day there was a flyer for a webinar or the other. You remember? So what did I start doing? It's interesting. So I Google webinars in my area of specialty. And I will now categorize them according to countries. It's an interesting webinars. And I go, okay, well, this is an interesting webinar. And for this webinar, look at the speakers, very powerful speakers. Then I'll do what? I'll now write to the organizers. So and so person. I'm Dr. Odon. Yeah. I saw the flyer for your webinar on so and so area, and I noticed so person are the speakers. Could you tell me which other partner institutions will be attending the webinar? They actually reply. I haven't asked them for the email addresses of these guys or their phone numbers. I've only asked them to send to me the institutions that have registered attend the webinar. So they send me a list. I literally list, I'm interested in this funding organization or this particular person. So I go to the webinar. As the webinar is going on, what do you think I'm doing? I'm searching for the name for the person that's affiliated. Once I find them, I go to their DM while the webinar is on. I introduce myself. Hello, I'm Dr. Odon. I'm so person. I know you are so you're doing da. Would it be okay to reach out to you after this webinar to continue conversations? I get their email on their DM. After the webinar, I wait. Then I do an email. I say, dear so and so. Following up from, so it is no longer a new connect because I have a basis of reintroduction. Following up from the webinar conversation we had, I am doing this and that. That's intentionality. So I trained, so literally I remember I was in a session. And if you ask most academics who have published have one thing in common. They know at least 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 international professors they have referenced in their papers, in their literature reviews. That's true. So there's this particular professor in Russia that you've referenced every paper you publish, according to Boskov et al. Yeah, you see that. But guess what? These international professors who publish papers you reference in your own paper all have one thing in common. Every paper on top of the paper has what you call a corresponding author with an email address. So I normally ask academics, how many of you have ever written to the professor you've been referencing for the last 7 years? I have never seen, hardly have I seen one person who raised up their hands. And I'm like, I don't understand why. So during my webinar or my workshop, I get them to tell me 2 or 3 professors they've been referencing. And I show them how to craft an introductory letter to this professor. And it goes like this. Dear Professor Boskov, you might be surprised to be hearing from me, but as it happens, I've been following your work for the last 7 years. As a matter of fact, I have referenced you, and you put in bracket his papers you reference, because every professor loves to be referenced. Then you go in these papers of mine, and you write your own paper. So in case he wants to check, he knows truly you referenced him. Then you go, based on my analysis, your work exposes the impact of this and the other one within a Russian context. I'm just giving an example. And so I'm thinking that if you view from an African perspective, the dimensions or the factors might be different considering this and the other one. Now I will be open to a conversation to follow up on this. It's very simple email. Guess what you've done? You basically told this top professor that you might be amazing in Russia, but in Africa, you haven't started. That guy won't sleep. And guess what happened? Within a space of 3 days, my DM, my WhatsApp messages was on fire. Why? Because these academics, for the first time, were in shock at the positive response we were getting from professors they've been referencing for 7 years and never had a chat with. What do you think would happen after 2 or 3 months when this international professor is about applying for a new international grant for a new project? What do you think he might do differently? Anybody? He writes to you because that has happened to me countless times. And so it has also happened to countless of my students or countless of academics who have gone through the program. They literally receive emails saying, oh, might you want to give us an African dimension to this new project? Bang. You're currently on an international funded project because you were a little bit more intentional. So partnerships is non-negotiable. I can speak about this for the next 5 hours. There are many elements of the partnerships. How do you get yourself in a place where my partnership leverage is so powerful and intentional that it even affects the way I save numbers on my phone? And I show participants this. And I can show you this now. I save numbers on my phone starting with the country. So maybe you can call any African country. I'll show you what I mean. Call any African country. So let's say Zambia. Okay. I know you guys cannot see my phone. If you can see my phone, what you see is Zambia is the thing you see first before the names. These are professors, directors, executives in Zambia. I am not Zambia. I don't live in Zambia, but I'm confident I have more contacts, professional contacts in Zambia than most Zambian professionals living in Zambia. You can do the same thing for Angola, Senegal. It doesn't matter the country. Zimbabwe, it doesn't matter. So what this does for me is that everybody on my phone know what I do. So what do you think happens? Every other day, this is true, I get WhatsApp message. Dr. Odon, there's an opportunity in Tanzania or this and so area. Might you be interested? There's an opportunity in... So this year, as I'm speaking to you right now, I am booked to give talks and training up till September this year. We're only in January. That's because I've been intentional. So I teach this practically in the program. Once there's a mind shift for funding, everything changes. I think maybe I'll stop at that point and maybe we can have a conversation on any questions. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Dr. Odon, that was a great 5 Ps. And I do hope that we'll be able to engage you more later on. But I'll hand over to Ms. Shinondo to moderate the question side. Olga?
Thank you, Professor Biamba. And thank you, Dr. Odon. That was excellent, eye-opening, invigorating to hear. So, for our participants, please note that the floor is open for question and answer session. You can either write your questions in the chat and they will be read out for you, or you can raise your hand and the floor will be given to you. You can directly speak to Dr. Odon. Please remember, this is an open platform for everyone to learn. As you saw, I took advantage very early on. So please. Dr. Nyambe, that is our Dean of Pharmacy, Nutrition, and Dietetics. You are most welcome. Please, the floor is yours. And while we wait for him, I would also like to mention Our Dean of Medicine and Surgery, Dr. Nchimba, she's also in the house. Welcome, Dr. Nchimba. And just to take note, please have a look at the chat. Dr. Odon's LinkedIn handle is Dr. Odon, Dr. Akanimo Odon. Please do not hesitate. This is an open platform. Dr. Odon, if I could also ask, what
Yes,
are
please.
some of the limiting beliefs or mindsets that you've noticed a number of people have that stops them from pursuing these types of things?
So I think the first thing, really, I think from my experience, is the fact that they think it's quite it's far-reaching. It's like, well, especially for young academics, I'm just a young academic. How can I even start? And so with the issue of, there's always the fear to start. And I think the point is, and if I'm to answer that question, the way I like to put it is this. It's almost as if, it's almost like, maybe I'll paraphrase it in a way. If somebody kept begging me to write a book, and I'm thinking, I'll think about it, write a book, and I've got a book to write. I write the book, and I'm saying, I'm not sure how do I start? Then I wrote the book. After writing the book, I sell 1,000,000 copies. The question I'm asking is, would you need to beg me to write a second book? Okay, I don't think so. Because you've witnessed the evidence of the impact. For me, it's difficult now to imagine not applying for money because I've won so much money. And that feeling is different. And the only way you can get that feeling is to actually win something. So it goes back to my point. My point is the fact that if it's so difficult to start, it's the reason why you don't do it on your own. Because it means that if you have a rejection, so most times people get rejection. And so they go, oh my goodness, oh, I'll be rejected. So even they develop a kind of a lethargy because of that rejection for the last 2 grants they applied for. Because they spend so much time doing so much work, but they couldn't still win it. But guess what? If you are working in a team of 3-4 people, you share that rejection equally. And so there's a propensity for you to do it again and again. That's level 1. Level 2 is find out who was wanted. For me, that was probably one of the biggest breakthroughs I had. When I to kind of break through that initial ceiling of just just starting, is find somebody who has won it and ask them, well, what did they do to win it? Because you can have the kind of conversations as long as you're intentional and finding them out. So this for me are the big issues that prevents people from actually proceeding, which is the reason why in the training program, I make them experience the feeling from doing something new. So for example, many people have LinkedIn accounts, but they've never used it for, if I ask the room now, how many of us have used our LinkedIn account in the last 6 months? I won't be surprised if there are very, very few. So in the training program, I actually make folks, some have forgotten their passwords. I say, well, revise it, get a new passport, because you can't be applying for funding and nobody can find you virtually. Before, it didn't used to happen, but now funding bodies Google your name before they even look at your application. Why would they do that? Because imagine that they Googled your name, or imagine they Googled Olga, and they say, oh, Olga, and Olga Shinondo, and they discover that everything online about Olga is about, I don't know, movies or about something different from what her CV says. They won't take her seriously. There's a disconnect between what your virtual footprint is and what you're proposing you are. That's the world we live. So many academics don't even have virtual footprints. And when I say virtual footprints, I don't mean ResearchGate only. That is nice. But who goes to research gates? It's only academics like you. But imagine a funding body who wants to know what else you do, because it's all about research for impact. So your connection with society, which partners do you work with? Which partners do you have? Who do you comment on? That's the world we live. And so these become important dimensions in grantsmanship, which writing a proposal cannot help you. Maybe I don't know if I've actually answered your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have a message from our Dean of Medicine and Surgery, Dr. Nchimba. She wrote, I joined late, so I may have not gotten everything, but I'm grateful that this talk has come now. Mindset shift indeed. I especially like the fact that collaborations are useful. Thank you, Dr. Odon.
Absolute pleasure.
We have a hand from Dr. Mkandawiri. Dr. Mkandawiri, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon.
Absolutely.
Mine is just a comment and just to show appreciation for this talk. And it's just amazing how that right from the beginning, I know I've been involved in one grant, and it wasn't successful, and we were trying to complete it in a space of 1 week. And I think that was just maybe preparing to have it to fail. But it's so clear from listening to your perspectives. And also that same grant, somebody gave it to us, and then we shared it, and then we started working on it. But just Googling and being able to find a whole list of where to find maternal health funding it's been quite an interesting talk for me to listen to. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Mkandawiri. We have one from Dr. Brown. Wonderful presentation and very insightful. My name is Andrew Mawila. I recently graduated from the School of Medicine and Surgery, and I happen to be one of the top 3 students that participated in the first LAMU, Lusaka Apex Medical University cohort of the FlexiLearn Continued Professional Development Program, with which I was awarded a certificate. Such a great program. Thank you. My question is about being international. How can I approach a seasoned professor and maybe get myself in his books, especially during conferences, seminars, and such forums?
So there are many ways of doing this, but I think maybe an easy way to do this, and it's interesting because you're a student or a fresh graduate. So a good way to do this is actually with 2 things. I noticed, and just to mention, I didn't mention this initially. So Ms. Olga showed you the book I wrote called The Graduate Code. And that book is such an impactful book and is the basis on which that program was delivered. That's the one. Thank you very much, Olga. So this is the basis on which that program was delivered. I think which you were, Andrew was a student of the program at LAMU. But guess what? That book was written for students and fresh graduates. And just 2 weeks ago, I just published a new book. It's a comprehensive book. So most of everything you heard me say today and a lot more, I've captured it in the sequel to the Graduate Code. And this is called the Professional Code. So all the practical dimensions of funding, everything is captured in this book. And I am planning a Zambian book launch soon, which I will communicate to Professor Godfrey, and obviously how I might come into LAMU and give some talks and so on. Anyway, so but to go back to the point. Most people don't understand that even a professor has a problem. Okay. So when you see a seasoned professor, your mind always goes to the fact that, oh, this professor has everything sorted, everything in place. And so you make the mistake in some case, because remember, there are many other people seeking professors' attention, okay, just like the way. But then They are seeking his attention because they want to get in his books by asking him for something. Oh, prof, give me a scholarship. Hey, prof, give me a postdoc. Oh, prof, give me this. The trouble is, give me is nice, but give me is not differentiating. So in my book, I cover the principle of giving back. So I go to, especially when I was in my early careers, I discovered the secret of when you are going to meet somebody very high profile, I don't go to ask for stuff because everybody does the same. I search and find out what do they need as well I can give to them. It can be my time. I can volunteer to help them do something. So I go to give instead of going to get. Right away, I am different from everybody else. I'll give a small story, true story. So I remember a few years ago, I was doing the book launch of the book, the Graduate Code in Nigeria. So I had this massive audience, over 1,000 people was at the book launch and the book and the book talk. And at the end of my talk, I was doing book signings. Are you following me? And all around me, there were many students kind of covering me and asking for the book to be signed and so on, buying the books and so on. And it was a massive crowd. And just in the distance, I heard a young man say, "Hey, Dr. Odon, I can help you with your Wikipedia page." He kept saying it. "Hey, Dr. Odon, I can help you with your Wikipedia page." So I paused and I thought, wait a minute. For him to know I need a Wikipedia page, he knows, that means he's seen all my social handles and he knows that the only social media platform I'm not on is Wikipedia. So what do you think I did? I pushed every student around me away. I got up from my seat and walked to the young man. I said, "I heard you say something. What were you saying?" He said, "I can help you put together a beautiful Wikipedia page." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes, sir." So I gave him my WhatsApp number. He was the only student I gave my WhatsApp number to. 3 days afterwards, this is true story. 3 days afterwards, I get a link on my WhatsApp, and it was my new Wikipedia link. I clicked it. It was fantastic. He became my immediate mentee. After 1 year, that young man got a full scholarship to do his PhD in the US without even doing a master's because of my recommendation. That is what intentional and strategic partnership does, and knowing what to do and how to do it. And I teach this in my programs, and I've also captured it in the book. I don't know whether I answer your question.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a hand from Dean of Pharmacy, Nutrition and Dietetics, Dr. Nyambe. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shinondo, and I hope I'm audible enough. Dr. Odon, that was an excellent and vibrant presentation. And personally, I think I've learned quite a lot. My research interest, and obviously our faculty this semester is really focusing on our research output and how we can win more grants for the university. So this is perfect timing. So my question is, if in your presentation you did rightly put it that that there's a lot of effort that is put on training to obtain grants or for preparation of good grant proposals. But one of my observations is that there's very little training out there for actually for trainings that focus on grant management skills. So I would wish to find out from you if there are any specific grant management tools, either open source or those that are more financially friendly grant management tools that you would recommend for a university like ours. Once more, thank you so much, and looking forward to hearing more from you in the near future.
Thank you very much. And you're very correct. So I think most of the time, and this is actually a problem. I remember I was involved in the grant, and this particular grant, immediately we began the grant, we now discovered that the African partners on the grant didn't understand how to administer finance and how to track invoices to an international standard. And that became a problem. So, sir, there are many tools for management softwares. There are good. I mean, if you did a Google search, so Submittable is good. Instrumental is good. There's even a Grant Hub, Smarter Select. There are several tools like even SurveyMonkey actually has a grant management element with templates that you can actually use and adapt. I think the function is about, first and foremost, understanding what you're trying to achieve, because some tools meet specific requirements but don't meet others. So some tools would focus on minimal, just one grant, and other tools will focus on multiple grants where they're having interactions. And so it depends on the kind of tool you're looking for. Grant tracking with Asana, that's a very, very interesting tool, focused on non-profit workflow of financial systems. So I guess my point is there are many tools available to manage grants and funding, to track invoices, track receipts, and how do you report them. It's about understanding which is what you want and doing a little research to figure out what can you sign up for. But most of these tools or these platforms, some are free and open source. That means you only download those templates and then customize them to fit you yourself. Or others you have to actually subscribe to, because they help you also on the back end to submit, respond to emails, and so on. So it depends on what you want.
Thank you. Participants, those in attendance, please, the floor is still open. This is an excellent opportunity. Please do not hesitate. There are no raw questions.
Someone left a series of questions on the chat. It's like a thesis. It's a long list of questions.
I think the room is.
Yes.
The question is for. So there's a question from BBC Research and Innovation.
Yes, please go on.
Yes, thank you very much. And it's very, very enlightening the way you have approached the issues of grant management. And having been in a researching organization, I know for sure that even when you have such a big workforce, there will just be a small group of grant writers. That has allowed to us. That's what we've actually found out. And it's always nice that when you have a topic, for example, when I was director, I would say, let's get this to the guys who can actually write and put things together. A lot of times we can train a lot of people in grant writing, and the grants come in many forms. And you find that they'll demand so much information. Like what you mentioned, is actually the mindset to say, how are we going to put the ideas together and move forward? But one of the challenges, I think maybe you may comment on this one, one of the challenges that we tend to have is when you have a theme for research, how to do the team building when you don't have people who can actually fit into your theme to do the kind of research you want, for example. Mobilizing that can be a challenge in some of our situations that you and this is actually one of the big comments that come from reviewers when you don't get the grant, that the team you assemble probably is not appropriate for the kind of work that you want to do. And in most cases, we find that as a challenge. What would be your advice on that?
It's a really good question, and absolutely, you're very, very spot on, Prof. So the big trouble is the fact that, and this is actually a principal element across many countries, why this is the issue, is that many people put the cart before the horse. Okay, so most teams are put together in response to a new grant call. That's a wrong move. Instead, you want to put a team together even when there is no grant call, and let the team spend some time, which is why I call it subcommittee meetings. Form a new committee, call it money committee. So each time they meet, they talk about What might be new areas of research we can do together from different disciplines? This should be happening even without a call. The reason is because when you put 3 or 4 people together from different disciplines to have chats about new projects in the first, second, by third meeting, you'll be amazed. I have seen this happen every time I hold a workshop. You'll be amazed at the ideas they come up with because they have done this irrespective. And so when a call comes, it's easier because there's already a nice fusion in the team. That's where the fundamental problem comes from. Most teams are put together because they have to put it together for a call. You haven't spent time together. And I can spot a forced marriage in 5 minutes. I can spot it in 5 minutes. I can spot a marriage that has happened. If as simple as organizing a half day or a 2-hour workshop just to hear the 4 of you speak on your areas is enough to start coalescing ideas of what a project that all of you have competence to contribute to might look like. That's what the problem actually is. Africans don't like working together. I'm sorry, but it's true. You stay in your own faculty for the rest of the year, and the only time you reach out to somebody in another faculty is because there is money. No wonder nothing works.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I also have a question.
Yes, sir.
I know there are questions in the chat and also running out of time. Okay. It's a coordination issue. I can go ahead.
Yes,
All
please.
right. So yes. So Doc, it was really thrilling to hear that Lancaster University has over 3,000 running grants or funding activities. And I wanted to know what the trick is. Is it the 5 Ps? What is it that Lancaster has done or put in place that has made that have so many?
So the trick is that every other week or every 2 weeks, there is a seminar. So just the way the seminars happen. I think I remember the MC of Mrs. Olga saying that it's like a weekly thing you do at LAMU. So what Lancaster, the first thing is what Lancaster does is most of the seminars that they hold is actually what they call concept development seminars. That happens every 2 weeks. Does that make sense? So these are seminars designed just to develop new, fresh proposals that are innovative and multidisciplinary. So this happens every 2 weeks. So there's a proposal where, and it's important because in that seminar, you bring many academics together. And the purpose is at the end of this workshop, they must come up with 5 new proposals that they can submit for new grants. See what I mean? So Ms. Lancaster has a repertoire of many, a long list of proposals. If I ask LAMU now, do you have a list of proposals you've written for potential funding opportunities? Chances are no. But that's not only LAMU. Even top universities in Africa don't have it. Well, Lancaster does. That's point 1. Point 2 is that Lancaster has a team focused on just grants. This is not a writing team, like my DVC was saying. This is actually a coordination team. You know the reason why? Many people forget that to write and win a grant, the actual writing of the proposal itself is literally about 40% of the scoring for the whole application. Hope you remember that. There is CVs, there is support letters, there is marketing documentation, there is data management documentation, there is communication documentation. that has nothing to do with the actual problem you're trying to solve. So people focus a lot more on writing for the problem, and the same person wants to focus on quality CVs, on contacting and getting support letters. That makes no sense. So this group, their job is to make life easy for every Lancaster academic. So the academic doesn't have to worry about partnerships or who is the new partner on this grant. Who should I call together? I'll give you an example. Do you realize that every grant application proposal will normally request for a 1 or 2 page CV? Do you know the minimum number of pages of an average African professor is 25 pages? Do you realize the trouble and heart attack you give a professor to ask him to convert his 25-page CV to 2 pages? I mean, you've killed him. I remember a professor telling me, a prof was telling me, Dr. Odon, are you telling me I should reduce my 25-page CV of all my hard work to 2 pages? It's impossible. And that is the reason why I didn't receive his 2-page CV. So what have I done? I have asked professors to send me their 30-page CVs. Then I get a member of my team. Your job is to convert these 30-page CVs into 1 pages and 2 pages. It is easier to send that 2-page CV to the prof. To say, Prof, can you adjust and edit this 2-page CV to add the small elements that you think is most important, which we missed? I've lost count how many times somebody missed the deadline because they were waiting for Prof to send his 2-page CV. So on my laptop, I don't wait for Prof. I have a folder on my laptop that has over 200 CVs. They are good to go. So I only inform Prof, I have used your CV again. That's all. That's coordination, which most African universities don't have. That's why Lancaster wins so much money, because that means the prof can just focus on just writing his expertise technically, which is his area of interest. But about funding, budgeting, I can't remember when last any Lancaster professor did the budget for his grant application. Why should I worry about budget? I'm not a finance expert. I'm a professor of engineering. So why should I worry myself developing budget when there's somebody in the team, in the financial team, who is an accountant by training? Let the person do the budget. They know how to present figures and amounts and costs and revenue and management. No matter how amazing a professor of engineering you are or chemistry you are, you cannot know like an accountant will. Forget it. If you try it, you fail. I know how many times I have sat in an assessment meeting where it's an amazing proposal, but the budgeting is rubbish because the prof believes he knows all. No, you don't. That's why Lancaster wins so much money. I can go on and on, but it's about being intentional. I'll give you another example. And this is very interesting, because remember that everybody who gives money, they don't like you. You know their in-law. So that's why they're giving you money. It's not because you're their in-law. It's because they have a political dimension to them giving money. So Lancaster spends time, it's important, aligning itself to the political framework or dimension of funders. How do you do that? Very simple. The Vice Chancellor, when you have a list of funding bodies, and if they have offices in Zambia or Lusaka, most of them do, because I've checked, do a simple letter. Dear Executive Director, this is the funding body. I am the Vice Chancellor of LAMU, and based on our assessment, we discovered that you are a top funding body who funds projects on this area, on gender, on this, on politics, and so on. For the last 4 or 5 years, We haven't been involved in applying for your funding. But upon a new dimension or a new strategy or a new initiative to increase our impact, we are trying to get conversant or familiarize ourselves with the landscape for international funding. Would it be okay to schedule a meeting where myself and my team can come in, or you can invite you to come and showcase for us the the key themes, the principles, the policies on what you're trying to achieve in Zambia as a funding body? Thank you. What have you done? You haven't asked them to give you the secret to the funding. You've asked them, I want to understand why you are giving money. I've never seen any funding body say no to that request. In fact, they are actually happy. Because people think for some reason that somebody who gives money lives in Pluto. They are human beings, they're not aliens. Okay? So now you go for this amazing meeting and they express to you their objectives, their vision, their 5-year plan of their funding landscape. Now you know. So in your next application, you now apply. What do you think happens when they see LAMU application? They remember, oh, those are the guys who came to our office. They're not spirits or aliens. They're human beings. So these guys are serious. They ask for a meeting because they want to better understand what we do so they can do it better. That's why Lancaster wins so much money.
Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Chinondo. We may be winding up now. Time is gone.
Noted. Thank you. If we can go through our profile of questions as quickly as possible. So this is from Miss Catherine Zulu. She's a second year.
Sorry, Shinondo. The questions don't align with the topic for today at all. I will spend too long. I've read through all the questions.
Yes.
They're like student economic questions. It's not the basis of this talk at all. It's actually out of the ball. So I don't think I want to spend time going through that. This is a separate conversation entirely. I do appreciate the questions, but I do apologize. Yeah.
Quite right. Thank you. All right. So the floor is still open. Do we have any other questions and comments before we wind up? Once again, please take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. I'd like to appreciate those who did ask and those who contributed. The more questions you ask, the more you bring out. But now looking at time, I don't think we can take any more. So,
yeah.
Dr. Odon, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you with us again.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
I would like to invite Professor Viemba to give us any of his closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nondo and Dr. Odon. We really appreciate once again your time. What we'll do, we'll try to get in touch after this meeting sometime to basically see what the way forward is, what are the next steps. We would definitely be interested in doing a formal training. I think that's what I can say off the hand. Those 5 we want to go into some detail. We talked about 2 days of training. We have to see how we collaborate. Since we already have an MOU, we want to look at the MOU and see how we could sharpen it or update it so that we include this component to that MOU. I must say that in the room, I did indicate, maybe I didn't, but we have the director of PRGS, Director of Research and Graduate Studies, Professor Mansa is in the room, and it is through his office that we will try to facilitate our collaboration with you, and of course with the BBC Research and Innovation as well. We will reach out to you. So just to thank you once again, and to thank all those that were able to join in to listen to this talk. is extremely important for us, and we do hope that we'll see the results of this. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye. All right.
Excellent. Thank you. We have come to the end of today's wonderful session. Thank you, everybody, for coming through. This marks the end. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.